So as Justin mentioned, I am incredibly honored and excited to be introducing our keynote speaker for today. She is the definition of a fearless trailblazer. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was elected president of Liberia in 2005, making her the first female to hold that position in her country, as well as the first female to be president of a nation on the African continent. During her tenure as president, she was a champion for investments in education and healthcare, as well as for women's full participation in the democratic process and the political system. She also negotiated massive debt forgiveness on behalf of Liberia. And as Justin mentioned, she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2011 for her work to safeguard women's rights and full participation in peacekeeping work. She is currently the chair of the Economic Community of West African States, among a few other positions. But most importantly, she is an inspiration for so many people around the world today, including myself. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf to Meridian. President Sirleaf, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you, Lisa, for the introduction. And let me say that just listening to the music and all of that has me excited.
Wonderful.
So I think we're going to have a great exchange in the next 30 minutes or so. I'm looking forward to that.
Well, your energy is certainly contagious, and I hope so. Well, as we mentioned, today's theme is inclusion, and so I'd really love to dive right into that topic with you and get a little bit of your perspective on the role of financial inclusion and empowering economic growth and social well-being in countries. Is it really important? Is financial inclusion something that has a positive impact from your experience?
Well, Lisa, let me start off by saying we are now living in different times. This year, 2020, has exposed the fragilities of the current state of global systems. The IMF has already said that global growth is likely to decline by over 4%. The International Labour Organization has said that we can expect that the global workforce, half of them may lose their jobs and their livelihoods. If we look at what's happening as a result of the lock-in because of COVID-19, millions of young children are out of school. And there's unrest all over the place, starting with the George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States. Mm-hmm. Now, COVID-19 may not have caused these, they've exacerbated it. But there's one thing that's missing in all of this. If we are going to do something about the financial system, we must realize that those excluded are those that have been disadvantaged most. Those are women and youth. And this is why we have this wind of calling for change, calling for addressing inequities and whatnot. Unless we can bring them in, unless the new financial architecture, global financial architecture, can be able to reach those who have been left behind, we can be assured that we are not going to be prepared for any pandemic, as we have seen was having the most developed health systems have failed because of the inequities, the inequalities that have existed in the world. We do need financial infrastructure. We do need financial intermediation. But how do we ensure that they reach everyone. What can we do to change the architecture so that they can reach everyone? They are essential. We need it for growth. We need it for trade. We need that to make sure that their jobs, but we also need to know that we've got to change the system of access to financial intermediation.
Absolutely. Yes, I would say we're absolutely in line with you in that regard. And at the Stellar Development Foundation, we do see distributed systems, blockchain technology as a way from the technical vantage point to be able to reach and serve and provide infrastructure that's capable of including everyone and providing services to everyone. But that said, from my experience, technology is really only half of the equation. You have to actually bring in community members. You have to actually understand their needs and design technologies and solutions that are going to facilitate and foster that type of participation. And I know that's been a huge part of your work and your legacy, with your political campaigns in Liberia, really championing the voice of women and bringing them into that voting process. And then as well as President, developing so many systems and engagements with, maybe traditionally under-included populations. Is there kind of anything that you can share with our community about that process of really connecting with underrepresented, in this case, underbanked communities, and helping their story and their experience be part of the equation and building these solutions?
Lisa, there are a lot of things happening with the young population in the world today. I can only cite some example in Africa. Young technocrats, educated ones, where technology becomes the means by which they can accomplish what they can promote trade. We have young entrepreneurs that are now having cash transfer systems, reaching rural areas where they could not do it before. The marketing of products by women outside of the mainstream, the transfer of money. Those are all the things. The young people are even building platforms by which they can network to each other. So this is changing the whole financial infrastructure. Because while I pointed out that those that denied access have been women and youth, they are now beginning to catch up, particularly the young people. They are creative, they are innovative in using technology to be able to reach, to be able to promote their products, to reach sometimes just to provide sustenance to family and friends and all the, this is the new part of the wave. I mean, I came from a country that was destroyed by civil war. The entire financial system had been totally disrupted. We had to rebuild our central banking system, first of all, and then the commercial banking system, ensuring the regulations that would create the conducive environment for financial intermediation to take place, to enable us to facilitate trade, to start the process of being able to ensure that we have the means of accessing external sources of financing, whether it's through the multilateral banking system, development finance institutions, getting these transferred, the chain of transfers for money is one that has to be rebuilt. And if you don't do that, then you don't have the means to be able to grow an economy. And if you don't grow the economy, it means that you won't create the jobs. And it means that entrepreneurship which is the key today when it comes to the young population. If they do not have the means for reaching out to each other, they're not going to be able to keep those businesses. And COVID-19 has already disrupted many of the supply chains, many of the intermediation, many of the flows have been disrupted by COVID-19. This is where the new financial system, the new financial architecture will have to adjust to be broader based, to be more inclusive, to bring in those who have not had access up until now. It's the only way of ensuring sustainability in growth.
Absolutely. And you're already kind of, alluding to this, but I would say, one of the ways we often hear people talking about this migration of the financial system is through the act of moving from kind of a physical cash-based economy to a digital cash-based economy. And so, kind of in your examples, allowing people to be able to kind of transact both locally, but maybe even potentially globally as an entrepreneur, and have more resilience potentially when things like a pandemic or other types of kind of economic shocks occur. So I'm curious to hear, are you seeing, in your travels and kind of within Liberia, migration to digital cash, both for businesses and individuals? And, what do you think that process will take?
We're seeing increasingly a cashless society. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And digital technology will expand how you transfer without having the physical element, of transfers. It's going to be slow in countries where the infrastructure is weak, where the capacity is not strong enough. And this is where we in the least developed countries will have much more of a challenge to be able to upgrade our own systems so that digitization becomes a part of the everyday means of transaction. We're not there yet, but we're moving fast toward that.
Absolutely. And do you see the mobile phone as really a gateway to this cashless society, or are there other important pieces of technological infrastructure that we need to have in place?
Well, I can tell you that mobile phones have transformed countries completely. Even in the most rural areas, you find holders with 2 and 3 phones, having access to 2 or 3 different companies that provide these services. And it is also transforming the way they do trading, the way they do transferring. It's the number of mobile phones in Africa today has exceeded all the projections that have been there. Now, like I say, the building of these platforms, the social network systems upon which people are now exchanging information, being able to communicate with each other, that's just becoming a part of daily life in every country, and far-reaching into places non-accessible in years past. And so the whole thing about inclusion, specifically relates to financial transaction and financial intermediation, is simply the way to go. It's simply how the world is moving in that direction. So your topic of inclusion, I think, is so topical. As one discussed today, how do we get a better world? How do we make it easier to move money, to move people, to move goods. And it's only if you can use digital technology to its utmost.
Absolutely. Yes, we recently had a partner go live on the Stellar network that is connected to mobile money networks and payment systems currently across Tanzania, but expanding to a few other East African countries. And it's very exciting for me to know that those networks will now, through Stellar, be connected to SEPA, to ACH, to other national payment networks, so that we can more easily facilitate value transfer, things like remittances, or even as you mentioned, kind of global trade through these various payment networks. So I couldn't agree with you more there. To switch subjects a little bit, because given your experience in the Ministry of Finance and World Bank and many other large financial institutions, I'm curious to hear if you've been following kind of the developments around central bank digital currencies, and if you have any thoughts on whether this is something that would be valuable for nations, would be valuable for people. Is that something that you've been following at all?
I don't know about digital currency, Lisa. I have my own doubts about that. Because I don't think the record is clear as to whether it has produced the impact, whether it's sustainable, and whether it should be used to replace the normal currencies that we know. I would leave judgment on that. I just don't think that it's going to be able to surpass the traditional means, of monetization. I don't believe in it. I know for countries like my own, where technology is still very low, it's going to be very difficult to introduce that into our financial system.
Absolutely. I think that's a very reasonable perspective. So I have one more question that I'm going to ask for now, and then I would love to invite our viewers to add questions of their own, which I'll be pulling up in just a few minutes. We can ask President Sirleaf and look forward to seeing what those are. So one of the last things that I wanted to ask you about was as well, how you think about not just financial inclusion for individuals in a country like Liberia, but financial inclusion for countries. So, I guess it's a little bit of an abstract question, but, do you think that there's equal access to the global financial infrastructure at a national level? Kind of in your role as president of Liberia, I would assume you've kind of had some good exposure to that. Is it equitable?
No, it's not. No, it's not. And this is why I started off by saying that the global financial architecture must change. The capital outflows to the low-income countries by the development finance institutions, by multilateral institutions, go with conditionality. The cost of capital to many of those institutions so high. Remittances transferred from the global north to the global south go at such a high price. At the same time, financial flows from poor countries, underdeveloped countries to the rich countries, which are the ones that have the custodians of capital, leave the countries from which these resources flow in a state where they cannot sustain themselves. Their financial systems do not grow enough. And this is why today, even when we get the multilateral institutions transferring money, in a short time, the countries can't keep up. We then get into debt services problem because they can't keep that. So we will need to change some of those. We will need to make sure that the cost of money is not too high for the poorer countries. One needs to see more capital concentration on a regional basis, on a national basis, so that financial intermediation can expand and thereby provide the basis for sustainable growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that insight and perspective. I had a less experience, but a similar kind of thought that there wasn't quite equitable access on the national level as well. So thank you for that. I have a couple questions here, and it looks like one of our viewers is actually a Liberian, so I'm going to give priority to this one.
Okay.
So Emmanuel says, as a Liberian competing a PhD in computer science, I see the need for this type of technology, meaning blockchain technology, in our country. How can we go about bringing blockchain technology into Liberia to help build it?
I think we need to encourage some of the young entrepreneurs to start a business in that respect. Unless we can get a few of them to take charge of that, to do proposals, to get support for that, to get it started so that people can understand the benefit of blockchain technology. Someone has to start it. So I invite him, our young Liberians who's getting his doctorate, come home, get it started, join the young people, like what happened in East Africa, as Lisa was saying, in Kenya and in Tanzania. They changed the entire system by starting it as young entrepreneurs. And so we just need somebody to get it started.
That's great. I love that. Looking for entrepreneurs to help take some of these new technology innovations to Liberia. So that's fantastic. Okay, I've got another interesting question for you. If we could kind of wave a magic wand and, tomorrow have instant and free payments, either in one of two scenarios. I'm interested to hear what you would prefer. The first scenario being instant free transfers across African countries, so inter-African payments, or instant free transfers between, kind of as you mentioned, the global West or the global North and the global South. What do you think would be, or what would you like to see happen?
I wanted to start with inter-Africa free transfer systems because we're trying to build, we want to have regional cooperation. We want to have regional integration in Africa. We now have the African Continental Free Trade Agreement that's just been ratified by most of our countries. That's supposed to improve trade among our countries. And so you need the system of transfers among ourselves, because that's the only way we can foster trade. And trade in itself will be an enabler for growth. So I say, let's start there, before we can go international, like global South to the global North. I think if we develop our own first through this system, then we enable ourselves to go at a faster pace in trying to sustain our growth.
I think that's a really exciting vision. And some of our fastest growing projects on Stellar are exactly just that. So B2B corporate payments or inter-African remittance payments from South Africa to Nigeria, for example. So hopefully Stellar will be part of building this interoperability and kind of faster payment networks within the continent itself.
But Lisa, I don't want us to forget cost.
Sure.
The cost of capital, the pricing for remittances, the cover of risk in these transfer at high price is what also constrains the growth in intermediation. So I think it's something that as we talk about changes in our changing world today, as we address inequalities and inequities, we've got to look at the question about the cost of private flows.
Interesting. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, the more time I've spent at Stellar, you understand what the real cost of, a cross-border payment is. And, it's not always just moving the money, it's also the risk exposure that you get from holding currency and these types of things. So completely agree. And I'm optimistic that open financial systems can help bring together capital supply and capital demand in ways that help to alleviate some of that risk. But I think we also have a lot to build and continue to grow there.
I agree fully. Fully.
Yeah.
That would mitigate the risk, and that would bring the prices down.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. So I think I have time for just one more question, unfortunately, but it's a great one. So the question is, what do you see as being some of the biggest factors to technology adoption? Kind of if we're looking at, various kind of attributes of a country, education, the way the government works, or even like culture. Do you see, either across Africa or even globally, there being certain kind of factors that increase or decrease the likelihood for technology adoption in a country?
I think governance is an important factor. The policies that lead to creating a conducive environment for growth, technology will follow growth and then become an enabler of growth. But you've got to have the environment that is welcoming to technology. And that falls back on national policies. It falls back on national leadership, willing to adopt those measures that enable the confidence of investors, the confidence of those who are going to transfer technology and capital. It has to be there. And I think that's one of the reasons why one keeps talking about unless you get the regulatory environment right, unless good governance means the integrity issues in many of our countries can retard technological growth because of corruption, unless all of those can be addressed by national policies, you will not get the full effect of technology that could change the entire system, that could change the performance of governments and thereby enable growth to be not only faster, but sustainable.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a great note to end on. And, governance, I think, is important, both from a national perspective, but as well as part of these open ecosystems. So I think your point that trust really being a kind of key thing to accelerate growth and adoption and investment is well taken. And President Sirleaf, it has been such an honor to share this time with you and to hear your thoughts and perspectives. Thank you so much for joining us at Meridian today.
Thank you, and I'll be paying more attention to Stellar, to blockchain technology, to all that it does to change the world in these changing times. It's been good to be with you, to be with your audience, and to all the young people out there. We just hope you go out there, become a good, strong entrepreneur, and change the world.